Okay, so for April Come She Will by Simon and Garfunkel, we're going to be capoed on the 1st fret. And for the intro, we're going to start with the D chord formation. But instead of playing it down there, we're going to slide it up 5 frets to what is now our 7th fret. And so we're going to have an open D string and then that D chord formation right there. Another chord that we'll be playing is same shape, but you're just going to lift off your middle finger or whichever finger you have playing the E string if you're a James Taylor player. You're just going to lift off that middle finger and play that open. So we have this as well as this. And then the last chord we'll learn is going to be open D string, 7, 7, 5, reading down the strings. And then if we go back to our D chord formation, we'll start off by just becoming familiar with the rhythm, the picking rhythm, which is going to be this. So you have 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. And that's going to highlight the intro throughout as we play it. And we'll take the first measure and we'll divide it in half. We'll learn the two halves separately. So to start off, we're going to have the first half, which is... So that's going to be the 1, 2, and. 1, 2, and. And then if we just lift off our middle finger to that second formation that we talked about earlier, we're going to learn the second half, which is going to be the 3, 4. 3, 4. And then we just put them together, and we pretty much got the majority of the intro. Play that a couple times, 3 times actually. And then we're going to go to the third chord that we learned earlier. And this is actually the trick to learning this song, is it for the majority of the song is in 4/4 time. But this last measure, and you notice I have it in bold in the tab, is actually 2/4. And this, when I was learning this one, it was so weird because I could tell that they were changing the time signature and the picking patterns throughout the song, but I couldn't really figure out what they were doing. And so this is kind of how I've broken it up to help me understand what's going on. The first 3 measures, as you can see, are 4/4, and then it switches to 2/4 for one measure before we go into the verse. And yes, 2 measures of 2/4 time is also 1 measure of 4/4. But when there's only 1 measure of 2/4, it becomes more important, because if you just continue to count 4/4 throughout the song, what you'll end up happening is one verse will start on beat 1 and another verse will start on beat 3. That's why I say being aware of the switches to 2/4 time can help in learning the song, so that you're always going to start on, each verse will start on beat 1 as opposed to sometimes beat 3, beat 1, and you'll be less likely to get lost. So I'll play that all together again. So we'll divide the verse up into a couple different parts. This first part is going to be all 4/4 time. It's going to be a G. So 3rd fret and 3rd fret on our E strings. And then keeping those fingers in place, we're going to throw down our pointer finger and middle finger into what is normally played during a C chord on our D and our B string, the 2nd fret and the 1st fret. So we have, as well as So for this part, we're going to be bouncing back and forth between those two formations. And I'll put up the tab. The first measure is pretty standard. And our thumb has to make a pretty quick transition between the E string and the D string to hit that open. So the second measure does require a little bit of finger dexterity because it plays pretty quickly. You're going to keep this open G on the left with the left hand, and then you're going to play. So that's going to be thumb, I do my ring finger, and then you're going to jump down to the G string. So you do pointer, thumb, middle, pointer. And then you're going to add in the same thing that we did in the first measure. So all that together. So that one does play pretty quickly, so that's something to break out into different parts, and then when you're comfortable with each individual one, then you can start putting it all together. Then the third measure, this is where it actually gets fairly confused. It can throw you off because, like I say, it is in 4/4 time throughout this whole section, but it feels like it changes here because he changes what he changes where he puts the emphasis in his chords. So it's going to start out very similar to the first measure. And instead of doing our, we're going to go back to our bass. And when you play that, it feels different, and it's because it is, of course. And the reason it feels different is because in the first measure, that chord right there is on the third beat. But in this measure, it's on the fourth beat. So in the first measure, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. But in the third measure, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. And that throws off the flow of the song, which is what makes it so interesting. And like I say, it feels like the time signature changes, but it actually doesn't. If you just continue to count it as 4/4 time, that's what I would suggest doing. So even though the time signature stays the same, the emphasis has been delayed. And the reason I suggest being aware of this is because with all of the transitions between 4/4 and 2/4, it can become easy to get lost as you're playing if you're not very familiar with it. So it's helpful to be aware of it as you're learning it. One thing that does help is this measure is when he actually starts singing. So you have So knowing that that's where he starts singing can help you practice just that specific measure and getting familiar with how it feels. So then we go on to the fourth measure, which is just the same as the first measure. And the fifth, which is just the same as the second. So if we play all that together. Now for the next section of the verse, our chords do change a little bit. We're going to start off with an A minor. So no E string, and then 0, 2, 2, 1, 0, reading down again. And we're going to play a little pattern that is going to be repeated several times throughout the rest of the song. Which is going to be... That's one we want to get very familiar with. That's our A minor. And then lifting off our pointer finger, and we're going to throw our pinky on the 3rd fret of the E string, the bass string, creating a combination of the A minor with a G bass note, basically, or an A, I should say. And we're going to play that same pattern now, just with that string instead. And then we're going to transition this to an F, and we're going to lift off our pinky, throw our thumb down on the first fret, if that's what works best for you, as it does for me, and then first fret of the B string again. So basically just an A minor with an F. And we're going to play that same pattern again. And then we're going to jump to an E minor, so 0, 2, 2, 0s all the way down. And then for our 2/4 measure, we're going to play so I'll count that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And for the next section, we're going to start off with a C. And we're going to take that same right-handed picking pattern and play a C. We're going to take our left hand and slide it up 2 frets to be this variation of a D, and pick exactly the same thing with our right hand. Slightly different at the end, but basically the same. And then we do have a quick 2/4 measure right in the middle of this one here. So we're going to play a G bass note. So 1, 2. And then back to 4/4, we're going to play an E minor. Play that all together. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is when he's singing, "May she will stay." For the next section of the verse, we're going to go right back to an A minor and pick exactly the same thing that we were picking earlier. And then we're going to go to an E minor and follow that same pattern. And repeat exactly those same 2 chords again. Those are both 4/4, so those 2 measures together are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have another wonderful little 2/4 measure. 1, 2. 1, 2. So if we play all 3 of those measures together, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And that's pretty much it for the first 2 verses. That's exactly what you play. On the 3rd verse, that last line does change a little bit, which we'll cover here right now real quick. You're going to play an A minor and E minor one time, just like we had done, and then you're going to switch to a D. So we'll cover that real quick. So we go. And then we go to a D, like I was saying. And the rhythm on that mimics the rhythm on the intro, because what we're doing actually right now is transitioning back to the intro. So we have that same 1, 2, and 3, 4 rhythm for the D that we just played. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. And because we're already playing that rhythm, it should be pretty easy to then just slide that back up to our 7th fret and start with the intro, which becomes the outro. And you end on a G.